The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Most of the time on a program like this, I'll tell you what we're going to talk about, and I'm going to do that. But first, in the headline, should Josh Heupel neglect recruiting? Just tell me first, how are you, Caleb Calhoun? And you haven't hit your head, and this is going to make sense to me in a few minutes, correct?
Correct. It will make a lot of sense, and it will break with 20 years of tradition in college football, I would say, about 2025.
Sounds like 100. All right. So I'm backing you because you've won me over on other things. So I want to see that. Should the Vols be considered a sleeper team? Are we talking about football or basketball? We'll get to that. Will the Tennessee basketball Vols field their remaining scholarships? I'm trying to wrap my head around whether it matters if you have all of your scholarship players. I'm not so sure. It looks like Wesley Walker and Tyler Barron, who we knew about Tyler Barron, didn't think that Wesley Walker had any sort of off the field issue, but reportedly they were dismissed by Louisville. So that kind of tells you that Tennessee might have gotten better by subtraction. And I hate that term. Should the Vols demand they be allowed to pay more than $20 million in NIL? There's going to be some schools that are going to want to do that. Tennessee, I believe, is in that group of 15 or 20 or so that can do it. And then Shilo Sanders is bankrupt. So I don't know if they had the whole LLC of recruiting trails and traverses that he went through. But perhaps if they would have gotten an LLC on that, that would have gone bankrupt. And now his college career LLC could continue on. But I want to sell or set up my buddy Caleb Calhoun, who I'll go ahead and tell you is one of my best friends in the world. He's close to having a child, so I'm excited for him. So on a nightly prayer list and more. But, Caleb, I want to ask you, what in the world are you thinking? Are you worried about having a growing family? Are you concerned? Because the headline of this show says, should Josh Heupel neglect recruiting? Neglect recruiting. I've never used those two words together. I literally haven't, even accusing somebody that probably has neglected recruiting before. I've never used those words together, because if I did, it would have been for Derek Dooley. Why would anybody neglect recruiting, Caleb?
In today's age of college football,
okay,
with the NIL and the transfer portal, even with the schools able to pay players $20 million, which actually even further bolsters my point, the amount of work coaches put into recruiting now is time away from the amount of work they could put into getting schematic advantages against coaches in the fall. A lot of college football now is more about your team chemistry, and a lot of the talent you get is about the money you have to pay, not the amount of work you try to do to get an advantage over other coaches. So the amount of work you have to do in recruiting, depending on the school, depending on the situation, and depending on the year, may not be as important as it always is. Josh Heupel has, I think, the best combination in college football this year of talent and chemistry. I think there is no team that comes close to matching Tennessee this upcoming year. These guys, a lot of them are sixth-year seniors. They have played together for a long time. They are very familiar with each other. That's where the chemistry comes. He also has...
If you furthered that with cash, I'm totally with you. I could say somebody on a Division II team for that level they have good talent. They have good team chemistry. But for what you're saying, especially when you throw in cash, that it's easier to have good team chemistry in the offseason when you're not good. But they're good, and I think they have good team chemistry.
Yes, exactly. They're good and they have team chemistry. Now, SP Plus models aren't showing this because they're showing Tennessee being near the bottom in returning production. Those SP Plus models are lies. The reason they're so low is because
Lies. Lies.
they're skewed. The reason they're showing that is because Tennessee lost production at quarterback and all of their production at defensive back, and that skewed them so low. Everywhere else, they'd be number one. Guys, losing production there, that's good news for Tennessee because they're only going to upgrade in those positions. Okay. And I bring that up to say, because they're upgrading at the positions where they lost production and they return their production everywhere else, they're going to have the chemistry, they're going to have the talent. All of their focus for 2024 should be about having a schematic advantage over every coach they face. And Peyton Manning proved this with the level he studied game tape. The more time you spend studying game tape, the more time you are going to find advantages over other coaches. So if you start now and you get that head start, you will have massive advantages when the fall comes. And if you are successful in the fall, the 2025 class will fix itself, even in the early signing period, because you're just going to get a lot of guys in the transfer portal that are going to want to come to you in December. And this is why you should neglect recruiting. And I'm just going to bring up a couple of names real quick, because really the need to recruit for coaches to have this base level of recruiting efforts started, Dave, wouldn't you say around 98, 99 when recruiting budgets kind of got evenly dispersed across the SEC? And if you wanted to,
I thought it was a little bit later than that, but across the nation or the SEC?
The SEC.
There was still a pretty vast difference. I can remember the Arkansas of the world being about 50% of the big time Floridas and Georgias and Tennessees of the world. There was a pretty big difference. There's not much of one now, to your point. I mean, you have money that you should be able to, if you want to pay NIL money, it's there. Don't have to beg and ask for it. It's there.
Right. And I guess where I was at was, okay, so maybe 2003, 2004, where it became, the recruiting fights just became incredibly brutal. The point I'm making was before that, in the 90s, there was still a period of college football where if you did other things right, you didn't have to be the best recruiter. And two names I'm going to throw out: Tom Osborne, Nebraska's conditioning program. Nebraska was never a top 15 recruiting program, and they had a dynasty of 3 national titles in 4 years. Another one I'm going to throw on the SEC, the most dominant coach in the SEC in the 90s, Steve Spurrier. Steve Spurrier didn't even bother to recruit. He was the laziest recruiter in the SEC.
This is why, Caleb, you're absolutely wrong. 110%. And I don't mean for this to sound mean whatsoever, is I'll give you those two. I'm giving you those two. There may have been steroids at one of them. There may have been so much talent in the area that you could bump into a 5-star guy at the Krispy Kreme donut and say, "Oh, what? How's it going? Would you like to play football with the Gators?" "Oh, maybe. How are you guys doing?" "You guys were horrible," is what my dad said, "but now you're winning all these national titles and you're on TV all the time. I think I'll do that." That's how easy it was to recruit in Florida once they just won a few games in the early 90s with Spurrier, and they did that with that offense. So I'm not going to say that, hey, you don't get Javon Curse if you don't actively work at recruiting, even though you have an advantage offensively. He was the great defensive end, for those that don't know, for our younger audience that went on to, he's not a Hall of Famer, he's right there in the NFL. And I believe 100% that you had to work and recruit him. So somebody worked and recruited. I think Steve Spurrier, I think that's too easy to be said. So I still believe, until I'm proven different. Now I think you can clean house easier. I think you can go into this upcoming season. Okay. The JT Lynn Dixon, who was the running back, I guarantee
Lynn J. Dixon.
Okay. And he showed up on campus and he got kicked out. Got kicked off the team after about 2 weeks. I guarantee you that came down to, all right, here's we got Bob. He's been a walk-on. He's a really good kid, but we do need a running back. This kid gets a short leash and he's out. And then we give it to walk-on Bob. I guarantee you that's how that conversation went. And when the Dixon kid messed up somehow, some way, he was gone. And Bob goes, "I'll take your scholarship." So it's a little bit different than it used to be, because Bob's probably going to understand he wouldn't have gotten it otherwise. But still, I do think you want to have great relationships with high school recruiting powers, whether those are the some of the big time national analysts, the high school coaches, scouts. I still think it's very important.
Well, I guess where I'm at with it is I'm not knocking and dismissing the idea of recruiting altogether. When I say neglect recruiting, I mean relative to the focus on 2024. And I think that, look, there were back in the day, and this Mac Brown was known for this at Texas. And I mean, how many coaches were hired because people loved how committed they were as recruiters? Tenacious recruiters. How often did you hear of that, of a head coach that was hired at a program, Dave? He's a tenacious recruiter. Like, that was the life
kid, from the kid or from the
athletic director.
That
was always the phrase.
Well, it was to hire a head coach. I'm thinking more along the lines that you're saying, hire an assistant coach.
No, hiring head coaches, when they were hired so often, or where they were touted first and foremost for their recruiting abilities. And the most common one is obviously Philip Fulmer, who was like, that was his biggest attribute. He was considered an amazing recruiter, and he did do a lot of good things. Mac Brown was another one. I remember somebody telling me one time at Texas that Mac Brown was one of the first coaches to actually focus as much on recruiting while the season was going on as he did while the off season was going on.
Well,
and
Mac Brown was just there, and so was Philip Fulmer. I don't think, if I have to sell a particular guy to my recruiting base, and I think historically this is true, the last thing I want to have to tell everybody is, hey, he's a great recruiter. I mean, it didn't work for Billy Napier. Nobody got excited about him. Everybody asked about Josh Heupel. Can he recruit? And he proved it. I don't think you want to go out there and say, hey, everybody, we need your money boosters because we just got a great recruiter.
There were a lot of hires in the 2000s made based on that. It's funny you bring up Derek Dooley. One of the big reasons Derek Dooley was hired was because he was the recruiting coordinator at LSU. So he helped recruit those national championship teams in 2003 and 2007.
I think we're talking about two situations that are bad examples because they're just absolutely over a barrel. And that is whoever Florida hires in the near future. I'm going to say the same thing for whoever, probably Ohio State, Arkansas. I just think there are some places that have had coaches shoved down their throats, and I think that is a bad, bad look. I want to remind you that portions of the program are brought to you by Don Self, State Farm. Customer service still matters. For 40 years, they have built their business on taking care of their customers in the greater Chattanooga area. Call 423-396-2126. That's 423-396-2126. And man, they will take care of you. Customer service still matters. DonSelf.net. When you're making those claims, you need to know that Don Self will take care of you. So let me ask you this. Would you take a 4-star transfer portal player? I'm going to make it harder on you. A high 3-star transfer portal player that, let's say, has the fanfare of a McAllen Castles, but he ended up being pretty good. Would you take him, or would you take the potential to have, here's a good example, same position, Ethan Davis, who I believe is one of the uber talents, one of the top 10% of the talented players on the roster. I think he's that. And if he can turn that into a great tight end, he's might be wearing a gold jacket one day. No exaggeration. So would you take your risk on that? You may never develop that footwork, ever. Or would you take what you got out of McAllen Castles?
Okay, this is where the whole neglect recruiting thing comes in. It depends on the
I know. I helped you with that one.
Yeah, well, no, it does. I'm not saying it depends on how good Ethan Davis will be. I would take, all things being equal, I would take Ethan Davis over McAllen Castles. Okay, but here's where I'm going with this.
I know where you're going.
The bandwidth required to get Ethan Davis versus the bandwidth required to get McAllen Castles. McAllen Castles, all I got to do is pick up the phone and say, "You want to come play for me?" Ethan Davis, I got to be at his high school probably every other week talking to his coaches and, trying to make sure I keep that ground. I'm sorry. I'd rather get McAllen Castles and not utilize so much bandwidth on that, on having to recruit Ethan Davis when I can use my bandwidth on other things. And this is where college football is different today than it was even 5 years ago. And someone brought it up. I think Florida jumped the gun firing Dan Mullen. I think in this day and age of college football, with now the transfer portal the way it is, I think Dan Mullen would have been perfectly fine at Florida and recruits would have fallen back into his lap.
Well, it's obvious, and no offense to the sports information directors out there, but when you hire a former sports information director to be your athletic department, Tennessee fans, you should absolutely rejoice that. I don't care who it is. Those guys lined up interviews. They did a great job at that. But now they're going to balance the budget for the entire athletic department. That's going to happen? No, it's not. Brought to you by Quality Tire Pros. The Eberle family has been serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brake alignments, oil changes, and more. All work is covered by a nationwide warranty. Man, Cherokee Blvd are online at qualitytirepros.com. qualitytirepros.com. Jump in there and say, hey, Bo, Off the Hook Sports sent me. Hey, Bo, Off the Hook Sports sent me. So you would rather have the highest 3-star and that's a transfer coming out of a UC Irvine, than the ceiling low 5-star guy who you look at and think, okay.
I would rather have the ceiling low 5-star guy, but we're talking risk reward. I would rather work very little to get the 3-star, the high 3-star, than work too hard to get the ceiling 5-star. Does that make sense? I'd rather spend 1 hour getting the 3-star than 5 weeks getting the low ceiling 5-star, low 5-star.
And here's why I wanted to make sure you were right, because I've been around a lot of guys, and I am not going to name names, okay, that Tennessee was stuck with because of the old scholarship rules, and you couldn't run guys. So I'm not talking about the tight end position specifically, but if you have a guy that you think has a huge high ceiling, but he's only played a little bit, like Ethan Davis, because he was a basketball player, and he doesn't hit that ceiling within 2 years, well, what can you do? You can easily let him go play another sport, play at a place that's a better fit for him football-wise, or play basketball again. So I tend to be with you. I want to take those long shots. But if you ask me where would I want to be the better talent evaluator, Caleb, you might disagree with this. I'd rather be the better talent evaluator in the transfer portal than in high school recruiting. What happens if they don't get McAllen Castles last year? Where is this offense that was already struggling with a new quarterback and a wide receiver injury? If they don't get McAllen Castles, this offense may really be struggling last year.
Yeah, I agree. That was a huge pickup for them for a year. And again, I keep saying this. If you have success, you can rebuild your roster so quickly with the transfer portal that all season with talented players, and the way Rick Barnes is doing it in basketball, which we'll talk about. You can kind of do that in football now. And I'm going to add this. We always heard you have to have 3 top 5 classes in 4 years to win a national title. Wasn't that the rule, Dave, for recruiting? You have to have a minimum of 3 top 5 classes in 4 years.
For the most part. Yep. I mean,
guess,
you would think that. Yes.
Guess how many top 5 classes made up Michigan's roster this past year?
How many top 5 classes?
From the 5 years leading up. So I guess because it's now because of COVID, you could say 5 years. A team has 5 recruiting classes on their roster.
I can tell you, it's no more than 2, and I believe it's 1. I believe 5 and 7 were their 2 highest.
Goose egg. They had 0 top 5 classes.
So 7
3 of their 5 classes. Sorry,
7. They're very highest out of that group.
Their highest was 8th. on 247 Sports Composite. Their highest was 8. They had 3 classes, not even in the top 10. But they knew very well, and Jim Harbaugh knew, they knew if they kept their players on their chemistry and if they focused solely on getting schematic advantages over everybody and developing who they had, that would pay off in the playoff. And guess what? Jim Harbaugh focused schematically and on developing talent. Nick Saban was the recruiter. Who won that game? Who won that game, guys? Alabama had the better team. Michigan won the game.
And I want us to be real clear on this. This is why we think that Tennessee should be considered a sleeper team. And it has nothing to do with the fact that we cover Tennessee. Just look around, and there are some teams that seem to have evolved in NIL and that have NIL. Now, I'm sure that other teams have evolved, but if they're a Division II team and it's hold on to Johnny at center so that you might win 4 games instead of 2, that's a little bit different than Tennessee stepping up and say, instead of going after this 5-star prospect, I'm going to make sure that I keep Cooper Mace. And I wrote a column about this. We didn't have time to get to it. A lot of things were going on, but that's what Michigan did. I don't know if it's Tennessee copying Michigan or they thought of it. Michigan overheard it and said, we're going to do this. I really don't care in football. Everything's copied. It's still A gap, B gap. I mean, really, at the end of the day, Caleb, nothing changes that much. I mean, we're still using terms like veer and option when we talk about the offenses that are running in a way different way, but kind of still the same. So it's kind of still the same. And I think that is Tennessee can be considered a sleeper team. That doesn't surprise me because I believe they've done what Michigan did, and that's hold on to their key players, and they're a more veteran team than any other out there that is really competing for a national title. Anybody disagree with that?
I don't, and I think you're going to see more and more and more of this. And you're right, this leads into our next topic because Josh Pate said on his show he was naming sleeper teams for different conferences, and he named Tennessee as a, quote, big-time sleeper team in the SEC. They are his sleeper team in the SEC. He said exactly what we've been saying, which is Nico Iamaleava is going to be a star. Quote, I love the moves they've made in the wide receiver room. Their talent is underrated. So is, and this is big, Dave, this is what me and you talk about, the most sleeper part of Tennessee. He gets it. So is their defensive coaching staff. Yes, Tennessee has the most underrated defensive coaching staff in college football, and people don't realize it because their defense has struggled. And he points out that they get Florida and Alabama at home. They go to Georgia late in the year, but they could be right in the thick of the race at that point, and they could afford to lose that game. Here's what this all boils down to. Tennessee is a sleeper team, but they shouldn't be a sleeper team because they shouldn't be catching anybody off guard. Dave, I'm missing something. They were 11-2 and finished number 6 in 2022. They had a drop off that last year with a clear downgrade at quarterback and only dropped 2 more games, went 9-4. They have what everybody believes is an upgrade at quarterback this year and actually an easier schedule. I'm missing something about why they should be considered a sleeper team at all and not just a legitimate national title threat.
Better than that, Caleb.
Nope.
You know why this team is considered a sleeper team. There are 2 reasons. Do you want to guess for one? Because I'll give you the 2. There are 2 main reasons, and it's brought to you by our friend Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. How about the Fire Opals, a Tennessee tradition? RickTerryJewelry.com, RickTerryJewelry.com. It's still viewed as a gimmick offense because people haven't seen it enough on their television to realize that it is a running football team. And this defensive backfield has looked really bad. So those are the 2 things that they pulled away from the 2022 season that was so special. It was that that Hendon Hooker was throwing the ball all around in the Alabama game, which is the game they saw, and then the quarterback gets hurt in South Carolina. So, it must be a passing football team. I'm just telling you what media sees. They do not see all of every game, and they are wrong a lot. I would be wrong a lot, Caleb, if I started talking about Oregon State. And I know a little bit about Oregon State, but I could get in pretty dangerous territory. And a lot of these people did. And then you have a guy that seems like he could just step in and fit the mold. And Tennessee's offense took a step back. You and I believe, and I don't want to rip anybody on the message board and that start to be a thing again, that came down to one person. If we're right, Tennessee is going to be the cat's pajamas once again. If we're not right, then Hendon Hooker was special, Jalen Hyatt was special, and the offense is kind of special. But I think they're going to be really good at the quarterback position. That's where I stand.
I think so too. And you are right about that. And I actually got more of a vibe from this from NFL analysts than anything. I will never forget Mel Kiper being low on Hendon Hooker, being down on Hendon Hooker, because he came out and he said, it's obvious that it's Josh Heupel's offense and quarterbacks are the product because Joe Milton played just as well as Hendon Hooker did in the bowl game. Anybody that watched the Orange Bowl and watched Hendon Hooker throughout the year knows that Joe Milton did not play as well as Hendon Hooker did in that game. Okay, Joe Milton did have a pleasantly surprising bowl game. He did not play as well as Hendon Hooker had played in some of his best games that year. He didn't consistently move the ball. It was a lazy take. But for people that actually do their... Here's what we're saying here. Let's call it what it is, Dave. Sleeper team is code for teams that national media haven't done their proper research on. That's what that means. Now, I've not done my proper research on some teams, so I get it. I get it. If you are a national analyst, you can't get everybody. But like, I've always said this.
It's still May. You're doing a great job. It's still May. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. The reason I'm bringing that all up is just a perfect example. The 98 team. I have argued for years that one of the laziest takes was that 98 team was some pleasant surprise team that, they came from out of nowhere. If anybody had actually studied the roster, they would have known that even though Peyton Manning left, even though Leonard Little left, even though Marcus Nash left, if people had actually studied the roster, they'd have realized that team was loaded with talent. Loaded with talent.
I might differ just a little bit because I didn't know Peerless Price was that good. I thought the receivers would take a step back. I didn't know who there with Terry Fair gone. I didn't know who their stopper was going to be in corner, but I don't want to get too.
But that 97 recruiting class was arguably the best recruiting class that Fulmer ever had, and they were all about to step in as starters in 98 because and they had developed now for a year. So they were just loaded with new talent. I mean, we can talk Jamal Lewis. The biggest story of 98 was the offensive line was very young in 97, and most of them were back in 98, and that was the biggest improvement. So I'm just saying there was a level of research that needed to be done. And I call myself guilty on this. You did your research on it. I didn't, Dave. I didn't do my research on Michigan this past year. For those who don't remember, I had Ohio State winning the national title going into last year because I looked at most first-round picks in mock drafts. And Ohio State led the way. The problem with that is that I didn't look at who had the most NFL potential picks all the way through their roster 1 through 7 rounds. And I didn't look at the depth and the experience. And also didn't factor in coaching as much. Jim Harbaugh's a significantly better coach than Ryan Day. And that's why Michigan won the national title. And you called Michigan, Dave, in September, didn't you? You called Michigan the minute you watched them in September.
And you know why? It's because I thought they looked like a semi-pro NFL team.
They were mature.
That quick. It took less than a quarter. And I was like, well, unless I see somebody, I might see somebody way, way faster. If that does happen still in college, where if you just got speed all over the field, you could still negate that, but they had enough speed. Now, Meat Drinker, he says, sometimes I wonder, Hooker Man and Caleb better have a good explanation or I'm going to be bleep poor disappointed in them. Here's what Caleb said, that when he said it, he was crazy. And he turned out to be right. I would rather have a guy that is top 15, and I never thought I would say this, in high school football recruiting, and top 10 or maybe can I get a top 8 or top 10 in the transfer portal? Because I feel like if you recruit top 15, you've got your base, your guys that you want to win over. You don't have to make concessions, because 2 reasons you make concessions to keep a guy on a team. You don't have to do it anymore. Billy Bob's a great kid, but he's not good enough athletically. You put your arm around Billy Bob. Sorry, I can call Tennessee Wesleyan, or I can call this school or ETSU, and I can get you a place, and we're going to get you a place, and you can always come back here and get your degree. Okay, Billy Bob, sorry. It's good to see you. That's pretty easy. And the other one is if they can't handle it academically, you're able to help them out. That's pretty easy too, because they don't want that to come out. So I want that guy. I want that. I mean, look who he's got. Brew McCoy was so coveted that now you go into the season thinking he is one of the key players despite coming off a major injury. That is top 5 type of transfer portal stuff. That's going to Atlanta and getting an Eric Berry as far as high school recruiting and that type of big pickup. So yes, I'd rather be top 10 to 15-ish in both than to be just elite in one. And I think that's why Nick Saban said, hey, you're adding a whole new side to my playlist here, and I don't want any part of this.
Yeah, it's actually why 247 Sports, the most valuable commodity now in 247 Sports, is talent composite rankings that they do every year based on just who you picked up in the transfer portal and in recruiting. I wish there was a way to do, and what I think should be done is, and I'm putting it out there because I'm not going to do it because I'm not psychotic enough and don't have enough time to do it. Somebody do a computer simulation of talent composite rankings with experience, and you might then have similar to SP Plus, but not exactly like SP Plus. And you might actually have one of the most effective measurements of who the best teams are. Because I'm telling you, the underrated part is not just the recruiting rankings, not just the transfer portal rankings, but how well these guys have played together for a period of time.
I'm just gonna say this. And Green Wave, I don't want to get in an argument with you about how much stealing signs helped, because surely it didn't hurt. But I'd rather play with men than steal signs. And they were playing with men last year that stayed around an extra year longer when they could have gone to the NFL. The same thing that Cooper Mays, John Campbell Jr., same thing they're doing. A couple guys on the defensive line I could name as well. A couple of guys can't even stay on at Louisville. Apparently, they shouldn't have left in the first place. Now, the thing that needs to be pointed to is, if I'm so high on Michigan, Dave, why can't you bring up their sign stealing? And you're very right, and that's very fair. But I've been around coaches long enough that I know signs change week to week. So I have a question of how much it helped teams that they didn't play on an annual basis, Caleb. That would be my thought process on that. And the other thing is, I do believe that play calling is the most overrated aspect of sport. I'd rather have a good game plan where my guys step to the line, boom, they know to change a play because they're looking around. They're like, this was a bad play call. I think play calling is way overrated, but that's another story.
Not only is play calling overrated, sign stealing is massively overrated, because every team, I know this much, every team has 2 or 3 sets of signs that they do to keep things mixed up. So if you thought Michigan was onto your signs and you didn't change it up in the middle of the game, that's on you. That's totally on you, because you could have caught them off guard totally if you did that. Another point is...
Now we would both agree with Green Wave, because I'm not trying to upset him. He's a great poster. But we both agree with this dastardly, and you wouldn't want your guy to do it, right? No matter who you root for, right?
Yes, but it's the other layer of this is that the reason I had trouble with the sign stealing scandal last year is so many other Big Ten schools knew about it. If you know the whole sign stealing advantage you get goes out the window if the other team knows you've stolen their signs, right? Because you can just switch your signs up on them. And last year, by the way, Michigan clearly wasn't doing that. Jim Harbaugh was suspended for 3 games for it. they weren't going to be able to get away with this because they were going to be under a microscope when they played Ohio State last year, and they beat Ohio State last year. And I thought that was Ohio State's most talented team under Ryan Day, and they still won. So, you know, and you don't think if this was a thing that Ryan Day and then Nick Saban and the college football playoff would have taken these things into account? Of course they would have. And they still got beat. They got beat because Michigan didn't steal the sign that calls Alabama center to miss to have how many poor snaps in the Rose Bowl game? That had nothing to do with Michigan sign stealing. That had to do with Michigan was fully disciplined, and Alabama, because they had so much attrition with Saban's focus on recruiting, was not. It was literally that simple. And this is where what we talked about, Tennessee has such an advantage this year. They're going to be so disciplined. They have such a rapport. The only question becomes if Nico gets on the same page with his receivers, because Nico is a first-year starter. I actually think that's, funny enough, the easiest part of the Heupel offense, Dave, is the quarterback getting on the same page with the receivers.
Let's talk Michigan for 1 second. So I'm going to reset the poll question. Would you rather cheat by sign stealing or overpaying to keep players around? We don't know that they overpaid, but they did bend over backwards to keep a lot of players in-house.
So what's more valuable, stealing signs or paying to retain talent?
Say what? We're going to work on that. Give us 2 minutes. He is Caleb Calhoun. And if you've got a thought on it, throw it out there, Green Wave, because Green Wave's throwing heat. And I feel like we're jumping all over Green Wave. That wasn't my intention, Green Wave. I didn't mean to do that. Jimmy Himes, by the way, he is nice enough to join us each and every Wednesday, typically, but it is SEC spring meeting. So he will join us tomorrow. We certainly look forward to that. And his appearance is brought to you by our good friends at Ray Varner Ford.
All-wheel drive, $31,954. 24 Ford Edge, all-wheel drive, $37,975. 24 F-250 4x4 Crew Cab, $54,760. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Say
wham. What's up, everybody? This is Jacob Warren asking you to like, subscribe, and share. Dave needs this.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
think I'm going to write something, a column on this. Because real quick, off the top of your head, where has Josh Heupel's recruiting classes ranked since he got into the SEC, since he became the head coach at Tennessee? Do you know off the top of your head? It seems like it probably averaged late teens, maybe around
And
20.
we're not going to count that 2021 team, right? That 2021 class, right?
You tell me, just give me a feel. I trust your judgment. I guess when I'm asking you on recruiting high school alone, I would have said, let's say 10, 15 years ago, you have to average by this point 6 or 7 to compete for an SEC championship. Because of the transfer portal, I don't believe that anymore. So I'm just kind of curious. It's a column that I'm going to write this afternoon, so I'll do the research as well. But I'm just curious off the top of my head. And if you have any other questions about a column that's building to my idea that hopefully you'll find entertaining and informative later today, let me know. But Caleb, where have they?
It's 17, 10, and 14. 2022, 2023, 2024.
17, 10, and 14.
Yes. He has. Now, to bolster the idea of recruiting, I will say this, and I want to make this point. The most productive players for Josh Heupel to this point were members of the 2020 recruiting class, which Jeremy Pruitt signed, which was the number 9 ranked 247 Sports Composite class, which is the best class Tennessee has signed over the past, since the Butch Jones years. So,
well,
you couldn't.
That is true. But I don't want to do this because some people jump to the next conclusion, and that is, oh, you're saying he's just relying on their talent. Listen, if Jeremy Pruitt went out, and he did a lot of goofy things, if he went out and recruited a guy like James Pierce or a guy like he brought in a guy like Hendon Hooker, why wouldn't you use him? I mean,
I'm not knocking Heupel on that. I mean, it's just adding the question of will Tennessee maintain this once they lose the Pruitt recruits? Now, I can make the point of just how, recruiting has been overrated for a while now, dating back to the mid 2010s. Guys, the worst team in Tennessee football history was the 2017 team. That team, the 2 best recruiting classes they've had in the post-Fulmer year were all juniors and seniors on that team. And that was 2014 and 2015. We're all top 5 classes. 2017 comes, those guys should all be juniors and seniors, and they have the worst team in football history, in school history.
Good point. Hey, I want to take a second. Jin, by the way, new picture. Apparently his daughter changed his picture, so he looks very Fraggle Rockish. Asked the question, did we get over 5,000 subs? We did. And I have to thank you guys because without you, it certainly wouldn't have happened. Over 5,000 subs, and you can see where it already has gained momentum as we were told that it would. And we're super excited and got some upcoming big news that we want to bring you that I think you will absolutely love. So where are we, Caleb? Are we at Wesley Walker and Tyler Barron? Do we want to get to that?
Yep, let's go ahead and dive in.
All right. Wesley Walker, Tyler Barron. Y'all, don't you always want to like the guys that are on your team? Didn't you look at Wesley Walker at one point as a guy that maybe was versatile, or maybe in retrospect, he couldn't find a position that he could excel at? It certainly looks like that now as he decided to move on. And then you had Tyler Barron as well, who was a player that you kept hearing that he wasn't too happy to be in the shadow of maybe 2 or 3 players, but I'm sure James Pierce was one of them. A lot of people are going to be in the shadow of James Pierce in his career. Now, Tyler, what do these guys have reported about them as they were reportedly dismissed by Louisville, where they were supposed to be going, and they barely stayed there, like 10 or 14 days, somewhere along there?
Yes, and we were attacking Louisville. Well, we were kind of attacking Tyler Barron, but because Tyler Barron had transferred from Ole Miss and then transferred from Louisville before landing at Miami, we were also attacking Louisville because it just sounded like they were writing NIL checks they couldn't cash because so many people were transferring out, after transferring to them in the off season. So we were saying, what's going on? Now I'm going to say this up front. I want to be clear. We are citing a person who works for Cardinal Sports Zone, a guy named Jeremy Wamman, who works for Cardinal Sports Zone, meaning he could potentially be totally biased to Louisville. Maybe he's running clout for Louisville. Who knows? However, what he said on a podcast known as College Football Addiction earlier this week, he said that Wesley Walker, Tyler Barron, and a guy named Penny Boone were all represented by an agent. And his quote is this: "I'm going to dispel the rumors that they had NIL issues. Coach Brom kicked them all off the team because they were starting trouble in their locker room, telling everybody, oh, I'm making this much. You should tell your guys to get you this much." So it was a situation where you had some troublemakers in the locker room, coach about it, and gave them a boot. So effectively, Tyler Barron and Wesley Walker and Boone, according to this source, were encouraging players to go demand more NIL money than they were getting on the team, which Jeff Brom didn't want, and Brom then kicked them off.
I'm going to provide a little bit of, I think, college football, big-time college football background that, Caleb, I don't believe you'll know, and I believe a lot of our listeners will appreciate. At least I hope so. Do you know about what percentage of players I've considered quitting early on in their playing career?
What percentage? I have no idea.
Probably upwards of 60 to 70%. I think
really?
Yes. I think there's
you mean
probably
in the age of NIL or just always?
Well, always. You're going to work yourself into a position. Now it's easier to move, but you could still move down. Okay. So I don't think those guys that realize they can't play are having a problem. They go slide down. Now, here is the problem. You are not going to have the same facilities. And I guarantee you this was a part of the problem because kids used to do this to community college. They would slide down so you could play immediately. You would play 1 or 2 years of community college so you could bounce back up. And it either broke you or you came back tougher. And it broke a lot of players. And I'm not comparing Louisville to Central Community College of Northern Mississippi. I'm not comparing those two schools, but I guarantee you they don't have the type of facilities that a top 15 to 20, maybe 25 school has. I mean, I know that you can name 25 better college football programs than Louisville right now. Can you not? So
easily.
I bet you Tyler Barron and Wesley Walker got there and like, I'm not exaggerating. Dude, there's a line for the hot tub? Really? I bet it was that type of stuff. That's why when these guys left, I hated it for them. They may have been pushed out the door, but I will give you this. Josh Heupel's reputation in recruiting circles is he doesn't push as hard as he could. And there's been times where he could push guys out the door. I'm not going to mention who. But he hasn't done that. And in this particular case, he did not do that. And now these young men are kind of stuck for real.
But Dave, what do you make of the reporting that they were, do you believe it or not, that they were causing locker room issues by encouraging teammates to go get more NIL money because they had agents and that's what they had been doing? And that's why Jeff Brom dismissed him. Do you believe there's merit to that? That's what this reporter is saying.
Oh, well, I believe that if they were troublesome at Tennessee, it's hard for me to believe that they wouldn't be troublesome after going somewhere else and then troublesome after going to a place that I think's on a lower level of football facilities. Is that
But
what you're
that type of
asking?
troublesome specifically. I mean, what are your thoughts on players encouraging other players on the team to go seek out NIL money? More NIL money than they're getting.
I think that the numbers are so exaggerated that guys, I just want to tell you, I mean, Cooper works with the station and or with what we do, and there may be some more players that I'm going to announce here shortly, but I will be honest with you, I don't know the other deals. I mean, those guys actually show up and they get interviewed, Caleb, and they really work for that money. I don't know the other deals and how they work. I don't know if you tweet something, do you get $25,000? I'm being honest.
Well, no,
with
but
you.
my question is just on a general broad sense, locker room issue. Does it cause a locker room issue if Tyler Barron is going to other players on Louisville and saying you should be getting more money than you're getting? Because that's why Jeff Brom reportedly kicked him off the team.
Why would he do? Okay, but no, I don't believe that. Okay, so I don't believe Jeff Brom on that. I believe he said, I deserve other NIL things, and the players saw him, and they're like, hey, we deserve it too. I don't think he tried to put together some sort of cardinal union. Do you?
Well, according to the reporter, that is what was happening, is that they had agents, and so they did get a lot of their NIL perks, and they started causing trouble in the locker room by telling other players, you're not getting enough, and you're not getting what you deserve. And it sounds like, I could say this, it's possible that was being leaked by the agent, because the agent would love to represent them.
Oh, or a coach.
Oh, yeah, true. Do you think that was happening at Tennessee? Do you think Tyler Barron and Wesley Walker had an agent, and that agent was going to other Tennessee players and saying, you're not getting enough, you should pull a Jeremy Banks and fight for more?
It has nothing to do with Tennessee. I will guarantee you that has happened because an agent has said, by the way, if you get them to sign with me, you'll get 10%. So without even knowing it, without even knowing it, I guarantee you that a 19-year-old has said, man, you ought to check out Bob. He's my agent. I don't know what you're getting on those caps you're slinging, but I got a wing deal and I'm making $2,000 a week or whatever it may be. I have no idea. But yes, I think those conversations go on. You would want it to go on, wouldn't you?
I agree. But this furthers our point that Tyler Barron may be the most short-sighted player in college football history, because he was kicked off. He left Tennessee and then couldn't find a home because he kept doing whatever he could to maximize his NIL deal. And on top of that, now you're saying he might have been promised a referral bonus by his agent, so he was causing trouble in the locker room for other players because he wanted them to sign with his agent. And it's like, you're throwing an NFL career away for what? Maybe not an NFL career away. Okay, put it this way. You may not be throwing an NFL career away. I think he'll get drafted next year. But he's leaving a lot of millions of dollars on the table by devaluing his draft stock, isn't he?
You know what somebody told me? They said, wait till the taxes kick in.
Oh, you're right.
And I know for a fact that they have IRS meetings that you can go to know how much you should pay in taxes. But there are guys that went to the NFL and they were 24 years old and they didn't know they had to pay taxes on that money. They thought if I sign a $5 million contract, I get about $5 million. So the kids aren't stupid for not knowing. They just are not educated. I mean, I didn't know that taxes were, I didn't know what's that FICA? And why is it taking FICA? Why is it taking some of my money too? You have a FICA listing, don't you, as well?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I never thought about that. And also just kind of the concept of like, what if, did they take that into account? Mississippi, I know, has an income tax. Florida doesn't. Tyler Barron's now in Florida, but Michigan does. And Wesley Walker's now in Michigan. And, you have to think of things from that perspective, but it's just like, okay, Wesley Walker, I still say I get it to a degree. He's only thinking about his NIL money because I don't think Wesley Walker has much of an NFL future, all due respect to him. Tyler Barron had an NFL future on this. And he is, every day, he's devaluing his draft stock, meaning he's leaving more millions on the table because he wants to get more chump change in NIL money.
I 110% agree. Had he said to himself, there is a great defensive edge rushing coach in Montana State, and I want to go there because I want to learn, and I don't think that I'm going to ever look good playing on the same team as Paul Pierce, or James Pierce. And I disagree with that. I think two ends can only help each other. I disagree with that, but at least that would make more sense than he obviously doesn't care who's teaching pass rushing skills at any of these schools, or he would have stuck it out. If he would have said, I'm a quarterback, I want to go to Ole Miss because the way they teach quarterbacks, and I don't even mind sitting a year. That would make sense, wouldn't it?
Make a lot more sense.
You know what he's doing with Rodney Garner, and you're bouncing around.
It's possible, and this is always, some people don't like to take any risk, and they live to regret it, because it's possible he's pulling a Scottie Pippen, which is he's saying, I don't know if maybe he's so worried about injury or something like that, and just not confident that the NFL money's there. So maybe he's thinking, I got to take this money now. Kind of like the reason I said Scottie Pippen, for those who don't know, after the Bulls won their first title, Scottie Pippen signed a 7-year extension worth like $18 million. It was a horribly bad deal. And the owner of the Bulls at the time said, if you wait 2 years, your contract will be worth 3 times as much as what you're trying to sign for now. But Scottie Pippen wanted the money then. He wanted the money right then. So he was stuck in a $18 million deal, and he could have had a $50 million deal.
Dylan said at the end of the day, Barron traded a healthy paycheck and the best defensive line coach in the country. I'll add to that, being a part of a great defensive line makes you look better, which I know you didn't probably have room with the character limitations. And getting back to your post, a bigger paycheck right now. Here's the crazy part. Unless he's just a jackwagon, who thinks this is a bigger paycheck somewhere else? Unless he's really hard to get along with and you just want him gone, Tennessee can stand toe-to-toe with anybody, and they wouldn't lose a player of this ilk if he was good to work with. The only reason can be that he is difficult to work with, correct?
I think a couple of desperate schools offered NIL money to a level that Tennessee felt, we have enough edge rushers, we don't have to offer this. And if you're going to be this short-sighted, that you're going to take this more NIL money when you have a chance to build yourself into a first-round draft pick, fine, you go ahead and walk. I think I think Rodney Garner was willing to say, if you're going to be that stupid with your long-term decisions, if you're going to be that short-sighted, then you go ahead and go somewhere else, because they got Joshua Josephs, they got Damon Hobbs, they got Chandavian Bradley, they've got Jordan Ross. They're thinking, we are good, we have enough edge rushers on this team.
Okay, I don't want to out the guy, but there's a guy that I covered that was a borderline second team All SEC defensive tackle around about those Henderson days and round about those Haynesworth days. And there was no question in my mind, because of some stupid things he said, that Tennessee's coaches, because he was borderline starter. If he's tweaked at all, he's not going to start. If he's 100%, he's probably one of your 2 best defensive tackles. Don't guess who it is, because you probably already know. But the dude was really difficult to work with, and I know there were some people on that staff that just didn't want him on the team. Didn't want him to represent the team, didn't want him to visit with the media, just did not like him. So don't think that these decisions aren't closer than you think. And this may be an opportunity with the transfer portal to just push a guy like that out the door. Just bye-bye, see ya.
I mean, you're not wrong. You're absolutely not wrong. So,
and I got no problem with it, because they're taking up scholarships for some other guys, and they think they've made it because they're just making a couple of bucks. I tell you, when you made it, you can be our good friend at Banks and Jones. We love T. Scott Jones. Hang tight in 60 seconds. This day in Tennessee sports history. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? Banks & Jones, T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. So I wanted to get us caught up to date with our poll question. I've got Tennessee is like Michigan last year, older. That's 26%. Vols 2022, fast, and then other. By the way, guys, Michigan last year won a national championship. So you'd kind of like to be those. And I also wonder whether it's Georgia or Tennessee that likes to run the football, if there's going to be some teams that start to establish the run a little bit more because defenses are built so light. But this day in Tennessee sports history with Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker, and it's brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online, with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Go to hemphousechat.com, hemphousechat.com. Use the promo code HOOK for 10% off. That's hooked for 10% off. What do we got today, Caleb?
So I would like to send a special rest in peace to Chip Kell. For those who don't know, Chip Kell was an offensive lineman on the 1968 to 1970 Vols, helped them win an SEC title in 69, helped them go reach the so in 69 they won the SEC title with him, and in 70 they went 11-1 and won the Sugar Bowl and finished in the top 5. He passed away over the weekend. Was part of the just legendary Doug Dick years. He was an All-American, 3-time first-team All-SEC guy, in the College Football Hall of Fame, in the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame, a center and a guard, was drafted by the San Diego Chargers, and then played 2 years in the CFL as well in 71 and 72.
He is one of those names that, for whatever reason, he caught a lot of people's imagination. Mine was Tyrone Hines. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Tyrone Hines was the best linebacker in the 90s. He probably wouldn't have even been like 8th on the 98 team. So, but there are some of those players, and Chip Kell has always been one of those players that was very, very good, but also just whether it's the way his name's spelled or maybe there's an off-field incident I'm not aware of, but he's always been a fan favorite for some reason.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think it's because he was just very involved. He was a high school coach for a while. So just kind of very involved in the Knoxville community and things like that. So, or not in the Knoxville community, excuse me, just the Southern community in general. So he passed away in Dalton, Georgia. He was born in Atlanta, an original part of the Atlanta to Knoxville pipeline that Tennessee has always needed if they were going to maintain a certain level of success.
Yep. And he was drafted in the 17th round. I wonder if you wait in like a green room till the 17th round. Anyway, best thoughts, prayers to his family, as back then he played center and offensive guard and was 6 foot tall, 240 pounds. So if I bulked up just a little bit, I could be that size, but I don't think that I'm quite going to be able to make it.
And we also want to point out that it is true. It's on the message board. Josh Heupel's mother did pass away yesterday. So we just want to say we're thinking of Josh. As we're talking about him and we're having things, we are thinking about Josh Heupel. Her name was Cindy Heupel. She passed away at, I believe, her age was 69.
I hate to hear that. Let's get into one of the topics that came out over the weekend. There is no good natural transition for this. I can just tell you that with everyone at Off the Hook Sports, We keep the Heupel family, Josh Heupel, and everyone affected by this loss in our thoughts and prayers. Can't even imagine being even older than him and having a mom very influential in my life. God bless you, sir. God bless you and any of your siblings and through this time of transition. Tennessee, it appears to be one of the many teams that will be able to post $20 million in NIL funds. That's the number that seems to be settled on. And I think it depends which school you are. One school might look at this and say, that's it. Another school looks at this and says, oh, that's way too much. So, Caleb, what are your thoughts?
So I think Tennessee, as far as the sake of college football, I want more revenue sharing because I want more parity because I think that creates more scholarships for athletes long term. But if you're Tennessee, you don't want that. And Tennessee's job is to look out for Tennessee. I think Tennessee should go above and beyond to fight like hell to be able to pay more than $20 million to their players. Because I don't think anybody would have the type of advantage that Tennessee had if you just let schools open up the checkbook and buy their players, quite honestly. And I've been saying this for a while. They should fight to be the Yankees of college football.
Okay. Tennessee and who has an advantage? Because I know you're not telling me that Tennessee is the only school that has this massive financial advantage where they've got a pile of money waiting for NIL payments. They're not the only ones, right?
No, and the NIL is a little bit different because NIL is based on business endorsements. So, for instance, NIL collective sizes, I think schools with the most NIL potential are not the schools with the most potential to directly pay players. Just one quick example before I move on. Miami, I think, has a ton of NIL potential because Dave, the business community of Miami, how many of them would love to just endorse some Hurricanes athletes and give them money to you may not even do it for Miami down there. You may do it for your business, honestly, at that point. So I think there's just a lot of marketing opportunities down there. And same with USC. Then there are schools like Texas that have NIL opportunities and that have big money. So I think Texas can open up checkbooks. I think Texas A&M can open up the checkbook. I think Oklahoma can open up the checkbook. Those are three schools with huge budgets. I think Ohio State will be able to open up the checkbook. I think if they ever got their act together, Florida would, because Gainesville's Florida's a gigantic school, but the apathy can sometimes hold them back. I will say that. But those schools I named, and even Nebraska, honestly, because of Nebraska, this isn't about the business community. This is about the fans that show up for games. Nebraska sells out everything, so they can bring in a lot of direct revenue and open up their checkbook to buy players directly without NIL.
It's interesting what you say about Tennessee being in this group that actually has it and is willing to do it. So I'm taking basketball out of the equation, right? Wherever Calipari is, I guarantee you he's lined up a 7-digit payment already. There's no doubt. Okay.
Yes.
So let's talk football for a second. Would a $20 million limit hurt Tennessee? That's what I want to ask you. And it's brought to you by our good friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas. 4 downs right now. I'll ask you these questions, and it's brought to you by our good friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas. Here we go.
4 Downs brought to you by Dynasty Spas, the most comfortable spas made in the United States of America, right here in East Tennessee. Drop in for the all-new showroom in Athens. Dynasty Spas, perfect for all 4 seasons. 4 Downs, presented by Off the Hook Sports.
All right, here we go. As Cooper, it is what down?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All right. If it could be enforced, would a $20 million cap hurt Tennessee compared to other schools?
Coop here. First down.
That's your question. Caleb, go.
Yes. Easily.
Why?
Easily.
Why?
Because Tennessee could drop $40 million if they wanted to. So it hurts them because it limits their ability to get a bigger advantage. Now, again, I want to be clear. There's no NIL cap. So they're still fine there. But they'd love to be able to do the NIL money and pay players directly. They're one of the few schools that it's probably top 5 in both. And so, yes, a $20 million cap would hurt them.
Give me the second down prompt, Coop.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
What school does it hurt the most in the SEC if you have a cap of $20 million?
I'm going to stick with Tennessee. I would have said Texas, but there's a good enough recruiting base in Texas. Tennessee neutralizes their recruiting disadvantage with the lack of in-state talent because of their money. And that includes NIL and schools paying players. And if Tennessee's stuck in like a 20 million cap where Georgia also has 20 million and Alabama has 20 million, I think all of a sudden Tennessee has more trouble winning those recruits out of Georgia and Alabama. Whereas if it's like a 40 or $50 million cap, I think Tennessee can outbid Georgia and Alabama for those players.
It's Ole Miss. It's Ole Miss.
Ole Miss can't spend 20 million. That cap doesn't hurt Ole Miss. They can't even spend 20 million.
They can get to 20 million. They can't get far beyond that. If you put it at 20 million, they'd probably rather it be at 10, to your point. But if you put it at 20 million, they can never get beyond that.
But that's good for them then, because you're setting the cap at the max of what they can spend.
Well, but I think that they are one of the schools that can actually compete for a championship that have more money to spend than that. I think Tennessee is one too. To your point, I don't think Georgia is one. I don't think Alabama is one. I think South Carolina is one that they probably get together more than 20 million and would be willing to spend it. The exclusions would be Vanderbilt. They could get the money together, but they don't want to spend it on football. They want to spend it on a new research facility, which is good. I like living longer. Florida would, right? LSU would.
I think Florida has a money problem because I think they just don't fill stadiums. A couple of things. Their fan base is fickle enough where they can't offset their losses in other sports, and they can't generate enough of a profit in something like basketball if they're not that good in basketball.
Okay, let's do this.
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Who should be ashamed to even have to ask of a discount?
Player discount?
Let's do this. Who should be worthy to ask a player of a discount to play for them?
There's only one school in the SEC that's worthy of doing that right now, and that's Georgia. Georgia can ask for a discount because Georgia can say, we've just won 2 national titles in 3 years, and we have churned out NFL prospects like nobody's business. Now, if you are an offensive player, Lane Kiffin and Josh Heupel, Tennessee and Ole Miss can ask for discounts for offensive players at positions. But Georgia's the only one that can just blandly, straight up say, you should take a pay cut to come play for me.
I'm going to give you a little bit of LSU, but otherwise I agree with that wholeheartedly. All right. Which down are we on, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here.
No, we just did third down.
Oh, we just did third.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
All right. At what point does Tennessee ask for a discount? A significant discount. Not, come on, Jake Merklinger. We'd love to have you come on by.
I think they're already asking for discounts at certain positions. I think that they are asking for discounts at quarterback. I think they're asking for discounts at wide receiver. And since we just talked about it, I think they're asking for discounts at edge rusher.
I agree with every position that you mentioned, except for one. I'll tell you which one, and it's brought to you by our friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas. The best thing about Dynasty Pools and Spas is that they've got it all taken care of. What does that mean? Well, you stop by their showroom and check out their fantastic selection of top-notch spas in that showroom in Athens. Make your pick and get ready, because Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers within 125 miles of that location in Athens, that fantastic showroom. They've got the cover lift, steps, chemicals, and everything you need. Delivery at no extra charge. They're just down the road in Athens. You pick the spa you want, and it'll be there for you. Oftentimes discounted with military and first responders discounts. Also blemished models, or just mention Off the Hook Sports. That's Off the Hook Sports for $500 off. There's a discount for you on spas made right here in East Tennessee. Support local. Dynasty Pools and Spas also has the best chemicals for you and your spa and your pool. No fillers, just the chemicals made right here in East Tennessee. Support local. Dynasty Pools and Spas, $500 off if you mention Off the Hook Sports. $500 off if you mention Off the Hook Sports. Dynasty Pools and Spas, dynastypoolsandspas.com.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Thanks, Coop. I appreciate that. Can you reset us on the poll question as it stands now, Caleb? Where are we? As I know we got in a little bit of recruiting.
Sure. What do you want the poll question to be?
Oh, where are we now? What
okay. Right now, Tennessee is like Vols 2022, fast 49%. Michigan last year, older 20%, other 31%.
Which would you rather be, Caleb? Let me ask you.
I think they're like Michigan of last year, older.
Except faster. I'm one guy that's fast, but it's not.
But wait, you got to answer the question, Dave, that you set up before the break.
Yes.
Which position did you disagree with me on?
I don't think they're elite because of coaching at the defensive end position. So I don't think they get a discount there. I think they just recruited at a high level there. I actually think Garner is better with interior defensive linemen than he is with elite edge rushers. That would be me.
But they're getting elite edge rushers, so I would assume that. I mean, that's all I'm saying.
I think they had a good run of talent. I'm not saying he's bad. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they went out and got.
I think it's been a little bit lucky that of the players that have fallen there.
Yeah,
I'm not saying
but I think he's a very, very, very solid coach. I mean, the average person might give him a what? A. I might give him an A minus. I think he's been very good there. And pardon me, but the A minus is Tyler Barron. You should have worked something out with him. If you think he's that good, it's part of your job as a position coach, unless he's just crazy. When there are kids like that, where you've just got to cut bait. I get that, but part of your job is to work it out with him, right? Isn't it, Caleb?
It is, but I think that there's a lot of, sometimes there are players that are just so incredibly short-sighted, and Gardner has too much of a
James Banks.
Yes. And I think Gardner is Gardner is confident enough in the edge rushers he has to say peace.
If you're asking me to bet, was it more Tyler Barron's fault or James or more Garner's fault? I will bet you 100 times over, and I would get you 10-1 based off his history. It's the player's fault. All right. That Colorado guy that's not fast enough to run from the law. How about 2 minutes? Stay tuned with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now, saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Experience it all at Ray Varner Ford in Clinton. Need a quick fix or maintenance? Visit our Quick Lane Tire and Auto Center. Keep your Ford running smoothly with the experts in our service department. Ready for your next Ford? Our sales team is here to guide you to this 24 Ford Escape all-wheel drive, $31,954. 24 Ford Edge all-wheel drive, $37,975. 24 F-250 4x4 Crew Cab, $54,760. Local you trust, experience you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
Caleb, I got choked up right as we came back from break. Say something interesting right now.
Oh, you caught me off guard.
Yeah. That's my bad. Pardon me. All right, here we go. I'm ready to reset this thing. All right. I'm a father. You will be a father at some point. I happen to be a father that's in the public eye. You will be a father that's in the public eye. If it's up to me, I would prefer my son not be arrested for any sort of issue that in which he attempted to avoid liability for a nearly $12 million judgment from a Texas court over an incident in which he was accused of assaulting a security guard in high school. I'm talking about Shilo Sanders, son of Deion Sanders. He's a defensive back on the Colorado football team that is coached by his father. Accused of assaulting John Dareen, a security guard at Focus Academics in Dallas, 2015, according to court documents. They first revealed by the Colorado outlet Westword last week. Now, I may be a little different than many of you. I believe that 99% of police out there are out to do a good job. We hear a lot of the bad ones, and there are bad police, just like there are bad talk show hosts. This, to me, is very, very troubling. This, to me, is something that Deion Sanders will get away with because he's bombastic and he's fun and he's had success. But this is something where I'm going to tell you, Deion Sanders, if your goal is to move up to a destination a destination type job where you want to stay forever, and that's not Colorado, that's Ohio State, that's Michigan, and the Big Ten, that's Alabama, that's what I believe Tennessee is, that is Georgia, that is some of the schools in the SEC as well. You're not going to do it this way. And in a lawsuit filed in 2016, Dareen claimed he had sustained severe and permanent injuries, including broken neck, damage to his cervical. Damage to his permanent neurological injuries and irreversible, an issue that you don't want to hear about. What's your take on this? As not Deion, whether or not he gets too much coverage as a player, but just your take on him as a coach, and this is one of his players.
I think this is I'm not going to speak on the actual incident he was involved in because this is way back in 2015 when he was in high school. Players have been involved in a lot of things. We don't know everything that went involved into this. I'm going to stop with that. Whatever legal judgments were found with the security guard, I hope that, theoretically the parent is on the hook, has to pay out. Fine. I'm all for that. I think what's gross about this is I am getting a vibe that they tried to get out of paying what was owed. And it sounds to me like the way around this was Deion Sanders passing the buck onto his son Shilo, because theoretically Deion Sanders would be financially liable because his son was a minor when he committed these acts. I think it seems like they tried to get around this by Deion Sanders passing the buck onto his son because his son was about to make NIL money in college. And then his son, it sounds like Shilo was lying or providing false statements about his NIL assets and what he had, which would theoretically he may have done to get out of paying what he owed this person.
Caleb brings up a great point. Hit the like and subscribe button because you don't get that just anywhere. This is a time where NIL is adjusting. So you don't really know, is it going to be the parents' money? Is it going to be the kids' money? Who are you better off suing? I however think you probably could still sue the kids, and you'll know this. Excuse me. You'll know this one day, Caleb, that you can still have car insurance on your kids as long as they're going to a university. As long as they're going to school, they can be past 18. So there's probably, I would think, some wiggle room on whether or not you're liable for what they do as well, which goodness knows, I hope that wiggle room doesn't last too long.
So the problem is Shilo Sanders' attorney says that he wasn't aware of these court proceedings and that he wasn't aware of any judgment until taking over the case. And he says notice for the trial didn't reach him or were sent to the wrong address. I'm sorry. I do not believe 1 second that he didn't receive the notice of the trial on this. I think it's possible that Deion Sanders... Now, let me be fair to Deion real quick. Maybe he wants his son to grow up and he feels like my son needs to understand how to handle situations like this. He needs to be an adult. So he expected his son to handle it. And his son being a 19-year-old college kid is like, I'm going to ignore court proceedings sent to me. Because that's what people do. But either way, he ignored it, and their attorney is saying it was sent to the wrong address. Well, the security side, the security guard side is saying that he declared his assets on the initial court schedule to be a total of $477,881 in assets and $300,000 in a Robinhood account and $8,000 in a Wells Fargo account. Didn't declare anything from his NIL projects. And see, this is where players are not understanding in college of what you have to do financially. You just talked about this with taxes earlier. You can't just take NIL checks and pretend that that's it, as if that's not going to be you. If you have a pending lawsuit that won't be used against you there.
Okay. And here's what's so unfair too. Let's say Shilo Sanders makes $100,000 and his taxes are, I don't know what it is in that state, but let's say $27,000. And they never had those classes where you had to withhold taxes and you had to pay your taxes at Colorado. Why? Because Deion Sanders is fine. When do you think the last time he's been in a tax meeting? He's never been in a tax meeting. He just gets it paid. Somebody, his business manager, looks over it. So if Shiloh's a little short, he's just going to stroke a check. Well, these other people aren't in that same situation. So to me, Colorado is one of those schools that's doing it halfway. They're doing it halfway, but they're not providing enough support. When you need support, especially whether it's Medicaid, and they can take care of you. It's Medicaid Misty. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen here in just about 30 seconds. Hang tight.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
So there you go. If you look at Medicare Misty, she doesn't get paid by her customers. She gets paid by the government. That's the same way that it should work with NIL, Caleb. You have a 1-800 number. How hard of a thing is this to put together? My goodness. And they help you, and ultimately they give you advice. This cannot be that difficult. The NCAA could have done this 3 years ago or 30 years ago, Caleb.
Yes, and this is what we have to talk about with NIL, and this is a broader scale, because it is possible, by the way, that the reason they're on the hook for this amount of money is because they missed that court date in 2022 because they were moving around and Shilo wasn't paying attention to subpoenas and things like that, which is how the guy got awarded all this money, particularly with NIL. I mean, there's so many confusing things in this step. The root cause of this is there needs to be a program in place, you're right, for kids where, one, you can maybe ask them, do you want your money taken out in taxes? Now, almost like have a default position where their NIL money's taken out in taxes so they know that. And then education on just the way.
Caleb, you're dealing with some families. Just don't think of it like that.
I know that this is whether
it's
colleges.
I'm not using some sort of broad stroke, but whether it's very rural or very inner city, they've shown up at a job and the taxes have been taken out. And it's something you'll worry about. Just trust me, there's potential for huge, monstrous pitfalls.
Okay, but let's talk about a couple of the things that could happen here. One, now how many fights have you covered, Dave, on campus since you've been in Tennessee with involving former players? How often does that happen? All the time, right?
Wait, former players or
I'm sorry, current players, when you were covering Tennessee during the former years, I mean, there was a period where it seemed like a player a week was getting into a fight with a student, right?
So not during practice.
Not during practice, no. I'm talking about the Brent Schaefer incidents.
Yeah.
Those type of incidents.
Okay. So during that little run, probably I would say just physical violence 2.
Okay.
2 dozen. 2 dozen. Go ahead.
Wow. Yeah. There you go.
God, I forgot. Left a very important word out there. Yeah. I think over that 5 or 6 years. Yeah. 2 dozen. Easy.
Okay. So let's think about this. Back in those days, it was, are you going to kick them off the team? Are you going to do this? It's not going to be that now. These college players, I'm telling you, you get into a physical fight on campus, you're going to get dragged through the court system for every dime you got in NIL money. And you're going to get massive civil penalties lobbied against you. Another point I want to bring up, and we talked about this today, we're going to keep this very sensitive because you want to take every case seriously. But you are much more of a target for women now, like you said, Dave. You are much more of a target for women now, and you better be careful with who you spend your evenings with.
Yeah, we got to do that tomorrow. But I'm in. I see where you're going. We hadn't thought about that before. We hadn't even spoken about it. That's good organic content right there. You wanted to talk a little bit of basketball. Where are you taking me now?
Yeah, so Tennessee with Chaz Lanier now, they still have 2 available scholarship players on the roster. They have a team that can go probably 9, that they're set to go 9 deep next year with their rotation. They could potentially go 11 deep, depending on Cade Phillips and Bishop Boswell, the new commit they have. They have room for 2 more scholarships. The question is, should they fill those scholarships? Rick Barnes said he was in no rush to fill those scholarships, and he wasn't going to fill them just to fill them, and he said that before Chaz Lanier committed. Is Tennessee throwing away an opportunity by not filling those scholarships?
Yes. Absolutely. And go ahead and phrase the poll question exactly like that, if you don't mind. Is Tennessee wasting an opportunity by not filling its last 2 basketball scholarships? Please do that for me right now, because there was a time you wouldn't take another player that you didn't really like because you could get stuck with him for 4 or 5 years. And I remember one Tennessee basketball coach going, "Man, I wish he'd transfer. I want the scholarship back." And I was really Fuzz. I mean, Buzz. But he said that, and they wanted the scholarship back. But you're no longer stuck. Now you can just run the young man, and you're perfectly fine with that. Once you run the young man, he's gone. Hopefully, he gets another opportunity. Whether or not he does, the point is, it is looked at far differently than it used to be. It used to be looked at as something that was absolutely terrible. That is not the case anymore. You're looked at just doing business. So I have no problem with running a guy that doesn't fit. Therefore, I don't have any concern about getting stuck into a scholarship. So, yes, you need to burn those last 2 scholarships. Got to do it.
So Dave's philosophy is use those scholarships on freshmen or underclassmen, and then don't hesitate to say, see ya, out the door after a year.
Yes, because you have another opportunity, and I don't feel bad about them anymore.
Well, the opportunities are the vast majority of players who enter the transfer portal. We're seeing the stats on this. They're not finding homes when they enter a lot of times. I don't think Rick Barnes, knowing who he doesn't want to be stuck in a scholarship for 4 years. You're not going to get a one and done guy that's a veteran, because that veteran is going to look at somewhere he can play and elevate himself. And why would he look at Tennessee when Tennessee is now so loaded? So you're not going to get that. So you're only going to get an underclassman. Rick Barnes, Dave, he's too much of an altruistic guy to not honor his side of a scholarship if he offers it to somebody. Now, you may think that's old school, that's stupid. You should, you got to change with the times. Rick Barnes has Zen-like faith. I've told you that. It's a level of...
Wait, Caleb, are you telling me that Rick Barnes wouldn't take 2 more scholarships that could help his team because he either made a promise that he wouldn't take another score? He either made it outright, or he was like, "You're my guy. I'm not come on."
No, I'm saying Rick Barnes wouldn't take 2 more scholarships to underclassmen to help his team because he doesn't want to be stuck with those scholarships. He would never run somebody off. He would never do what you're saying he should do.
That's crazy.
Why wouldn't he run somebody off? Everybody's
Rick
fine with
Barnes-
those rules, and he find him a place to play.
Rick Barnes is a super devout Christian and a man of faith and believes that his word is his bond and doesn't want to break it. I'm telling you, that is who Rick Barnes is. This is the guy who
I consider mine I'm a man of faith, same faith as he is, but there's nothing that's wrong the Bible doesn't say he doth not tell a basketball player that he doth not earneth minutes if he doesn't go to another program. And that's all you do. I wasn't crazy about Zakai Ziegler when I first saw him play. I thought he was going to be one of those guys you'd have to have a conversation with. I'm wrong, but I thought you'd have to, this is not exactly the kind of point guard we're looking for. I thought that a long time ago. I don't think that now, obviously.
Rick Barnes is, when I say his type of faith, though, I mean he is so committed to the golden rule in his mind. This is what he's doing. He's saying, if I were offered a scholarship, I would hope that the coach would honor that scholarship all 4 years I was there. Therefore, since I would hope they would do it for me, I'm going to do it for anybody I offer it to, because I'm going to do it to others as I would have them do unto me. And that is how Rick Barnes believes, and that is his philosophy, and it is admirable. It's maybe not the cutthroat level you need to win, but Rick Barnes is, I have a feeling that if you Rick Barnes is the guy, if I take him to a restaurant, I might order a beer and he's ordering club sodas the rest of the night because he just doesn't believe in drinking.
Okay. So you just said that you want to know that you have the security to be someplace for 4 years if you sign up. Well, if I'm Chaslin Neer right now, how many years of eligibility does he have remaining?
1.
1 year. You sure he doesn't have more than 1 year?
Yeah, he just has 1.
Okay. Okay, so you know what? If I call and I say, hey, I heard this rumor you're wanting to take another 4-star guy, and he looks like me, and he might be a natural scorer. You know what I'm going to say? That is just absolutely
That's hot.
incredible. You're saying he's going to go,
Like, that is total bullshit.
why wouldn't he take the better player?
No, I'm not saying he wouldn't take the better player.
Yes,
He could
it took
take
you too long to break that down because my board froze up. Go ahead.
I'm saying if he took a player, he would commit. He doesn't want to commit to that play. If he took a player, he would commit to him for however many years of eligibility he has left. And he's not going to get anybody right now with years of eligibility left that's a 4-star. He's not really, I don't think there's many people that are entertaining Tennessee because of how deep they are right now. So if he took a player, Dave, what you're talking about is a 2 to 3-star underclassman who Rick Barnes, because he doesn't believe in running guys off, would be locked in for at least 3 years.
I'm not going to get locked into him because I'm going to say, hey, Jimmy Bob, I'm sorry. This isn't working out. And I think that's the way big-time college athletes need to be treated now. And if they don't like it, then go to a smaller school. Places like Liberty aren't going to boot you out. Other places like ETSU aren't going to boot you out. But if you want to play at this level, I'm sorry, this is different.
But then what I'm talking about, though, is you may think that, and you may think that's how it goes. Rick Barnes doesn't. Rick Barnes thinks, Rick Barnes philosophically thinks that is wrong to do to somebody. This is a guy who he got fired by Texas, and a month later he showed up for TJ Ford's graduation from Texas.
He's Caleb Calhoun. I agree. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Got an exciting edition, we believe, with the family this week, so hang tight. Be sure you hit that like and subscribe button. We're with you weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern. It will be a surprise guest tomorrow. It rhymes with Benny Lyons. It's Jimmy Himes. So join us from SEC spring meetings.